it's so competitive and you've got no chance and it's basically a lost cause. However, what have you got to lose through attending? So an extra note is something I didn't know. You can actually apply to medicine. Hello everybody, my name's Amelia and I've just finished my first year in medical school and I'm going into my second year in September. So my journey into medical school was not plain sailing at all. I actually ended up taking a gap year because I got rejected from all 4 medical schools the first time round, and then the second year I got rejected from 3 out of 4 and I finally got my offer. So I definitely didn't have an easy ride into medical school. When I started medical school, there was all these people and all these students that had different journeys into medical school, and it really opens your eyes as to how many different routes there are into medical school. A lot of them I actually had no clue about before I started, and maybe if I did know about them, I might have actually used a different route and gone into medical school through a different route. In this video, I'm going to be talking about all the different routes into medical school and what I've learned about them from my friends who have got into medical school in different ways. This is just from my knowledge and some of them my experience and speaking to other people. So anything I say in this video, make sure that you do your own research on, because things are constantly changing and at the time you're watching the video it could be completely different to what it was when I'm filming the video. So just make sure you check anything I say and just do your own research as well. So with that being said, let's get into the video. So the first route into medicine is one that is definitely underrated, and the first route is to apply through clearing. So if you don't know what clearing is, it's basically when all the extra places for different courses that haven't been filled get released on a specific date of the year, in August usually after results day, and it is basically a battle of who can get the places. And for other courses it is much easier than medicine, as you can imagine, but I wouldn't rule it out for medicine. I knew about clearing when I got rejected from medical school. I didn't actually bother to even look into it or try and get in through clearing. Things I'd heard about clearing was it's so competitive and you've got no chance and it's basically a lost cause. However, when I started medical school, the amount of people that I had spoken to who actually got in through clearing was insane. So now I think, why didn't I try? Yes, it's competitive, but getting into medical school is competitive. What have you got to lose through attempting to get in through clearing? I would definitely recommend just trying, because you never know. It could be your lucky day, and it is a case of luck going in through clearing, but I would definitely not rule it out. So some of the pros of applying through clearing is that it gives you an extra chance to still go to medical school that year. So it means you're not going to have to wait another year or another 3 years or however many years depending on the route you take. It just gives you an extra chance for that year, which is fantastic. So some of the cons of clearing is, as I said, it is competitive. You have got all these people kind of fighting for the very limited spaces that are available. So by that I just mean, don't put all your eggs in that basket. Have definitely another idea in mind, or be thinking about what else you're going to do if you've not got the place that you were hoping for. But be optimistic. Another con is that it's probably going to be stressful, but it's going to be stressful regardless. If you've just been rejected from medicine, you are probably going to be very upset and very stressed regardless. So I would definitely recommend just taking this one extra shot. So the second route into medicine is taking a gap year. I did not expect so many people to have taken a gap year when I started medical school. Obviously I took a gap year and I really thought I was going to be the only one, and so many people take gap years for multiple different reasons. Some people just take it for the year out, some people take it to reapply and strengthen their application, some people take it because they've done another degree and they just want to chill. There's so many different reasons that people take gap years. So if you are thinking about taking a gap year, you are not the only person that's thinking about that, because a lot a lot of people take gap years, a lot more than you will ever imagine. So obviously I am a little bit biased taking a gap year, purely because I had such an amazing time on my gap year. Obviously, when I first found out that I had to take a gap year, I was devastated. I thought this is the worst possible thing that could ever happen. But on the other side of that now, I had the best time. So if you're in the position where you're thinking of taking a gap year, or you have to because you've not got the grades or whatever, don't worry, because you will have the best time. So that brings me on to the pros of taking a gap year. As I've touched on, it gives you time to do what you want and kind of have a battery reset before starting such an intense course. Another thing is it actually gives you time to save up, which means when you do start uni, you will be in a much better financial position. A few things have happened this year financially, and if I wouldn't have taken my gap year, I wouldn't have the finances to have dealt with them. So it definitely put me in a good position to deal with the financial stress of being in university. It also gives you a full year to dedicate to strengthening your application. Obviously, when applying to medicine, most people are in at A-levels and they're trying to juggle all the application process with completing their A-levels. So if you're in that position, it gives you a year to solely dedicate to applying to medical school. Obviously, you want to be doing other things as well and having fun and experiencing life, but it does give you a year to dedicate to self-improvement and strengthening your application alongside other things which you definitely should be doing. So some cons of taking a gap year. So obviously if you've taken a year out and you've had the time of your life, you may be reluctant to go back. Some people take a gap year and decide they don't actually want to do medicine. As sad as that is, if that happens, it's probably a good thing, because there's no point doing medicine if you didn't really want to do it, because it just wouldn't have been fun. Another thing from taking a gap year, my personal experience, is you do get out of the habit of learning. So that just meant that when I started medical school, it did take me slightly longer than everybody else to kind of get back in the swing of things. But I still passed my exams, I still did well, and it's not something you should be worried about, just something you should be aware of. The last con that I can think of taking a gap year from my experience is that reapplying to medical school can be a little bit more difficult without the support of your college or your sixth form. With that being said, when I left sixth form, I did keep in contact with my head of year and a few of the teachers that I were close with, so I didn't really struggle too much. But I know that some people do struggle, but it doesn't mean it's impossible, and maybe it's just something to be aware of, and be aware that maybe it's a good idea to keep in contact if you can. The third route into medicine is resits. This is mainly for people who didn't get the A-levels. However, some people do get the A-levels but don't get the right A-levels. For example, if they decide later on that they want to do medicine. So if you're in this position, resits is definitely an option to go down. So some pros of resitting your A-levels are very similar to taking a gap year. Like, it gives you time to work on yourself, and it gives you an extra year to kind of do what you want, gives you a year to maybe work if you have the time to, and put you in a better financial position. Also, if you didn't get the A-levels first time round, you've already done the A-levels once, so you know what you're doing, and you might have a little bit of knowledge already, so it's going to give you a bit of a head start. So some cons of resitting your A-levels, similar to taking a gap year again. And also one thing I didn't mention is a lot of people are very reluctant to take a year, so that might not be appealing to some people. But from my experience, and I was in that position, taking a year out really isn't the end of the world, and a year goes so quickly regardless. Another con to resitting your A-levels is it does limit which medical schools you can apply to, because not all medical schools accept resits. It's very important to look up the criteria. Some medical schools allow resits if you've got extenuating circumstances, if you're only resitting one subject, or if you're only resitting two subjects. Some medical schools have a criteria where you have to have a minimum of a B and you're just boosting your B up to an A, so it is very specific to the medical school. The fourth route into medicine is an access course, which is usually completed alongside your A-levels. It's a year long, so you do it in your sixth form or college, and it is basically a course which is preparing you for medical school. It's often directed at people who are disadvantaged in some way or are struggling to meet the criteria for some reason. So some pros of completing an access course: you're not actually taking a year out or a few years out to complete this course. It's completed alongside your A-levels, so obviously the workload is going to be higher because you're doing an extra course, but in terms of time, there's going to be no extra time after you finish your A-level. So some cons of completing an access to medicine course is that it is actually an increased workload alongside your A-levels, which is a stressful time anyway, and obviously it's doing something extra alongside the application process, and completing your A-level work and studying is an extra thing, which can be a bit much. But in hindsight, it could prepare you for how busy medical school is and shows commitment to wanting to do medicine. Another con is that there's specific requirements for each medical school, and it does not guarantee you a place. But a lot of the time, it is a guaranteed interview with the medical school, providing that you complete the course. Different requirements for different medical schools, so it's really important to do your research on this and look into which access course is accepted by which medical schools. So the fifth route into medicine is taking a gateway year, or it's also known as a foundation year, which is where you apply to the medical school to do the gateway medical degree, which is an extra year before you start the medical degree. So my medical school actually does this. So you do your first year, which is foundation year, and then you then join the first year medical students and go through medical school like as your normal 5 years. So it's just an extra year before you start your first year medical school. And in that year, you're going to be making a little bit of a start on learning the work that you will be completing later on in your first year medical school, which will be your second year, but first year medical school, if that makes sense. This route into medicine is usually for people who haven't been able to get the grades or are applying to medical school with lower grade offers. So I know that in Hull York Medical School, they do accept you into the gateway year if you have a BBC. You have to get a B in biology and a B in chemistry. You have to have 5 grades at GCSE between an A star and a C, or a 9 and a 4. This is a very good option for people who are applying to medical school with lower grades or maybe a lower band situational judgment score. So some pros is that it does give you a bit of a head start on the work and the knowledge, because obviously you're not going to learn everything and you are going to learn some different things, but a lot of the content is overlapping. So when you come to start the first year of medical school, which is your second year at uni, you already have a good basis of knowledge. You've also already spent the year figuring it out. So when all the first year medics come in, you've figured it out already. And with that being said, a lot of the gateway year students actually did better in their first year medical school exams than us first year medics. So it does just show that extra year is very worth it. So leading on from that, some cons of taking a gateway year is also the extra year. Not so much the extra year at uni, but the financial burden and the extra debt that you're going to get into. And another con from the gateway year is that you do have to meet the criteria that I have mentioned, and that is specific to Hull York Medical School, but each medical school has a different criteria, and not every medical school offers this gateway year. The sixth route into medical school is applying through postgraduate. So that is where you do an undergraduate degree, usually something that is related to medicine, like biomedical science or anatomy, and you apply to medicine through a postgraduate pathway. So some pros of doing another degree before medical school is that it does actually give you time to mature before starting such an intense and demanding degree. Also, it might give you some time to explore another subject that you may be passionate about. It also gives you a head start on any overlapping content. For example, if you did an anatomy degree, when you start medical school, you'll be really strong in anatomy, which is giving you a head start. If you've done another degree, you've already probably figured out what works, and it's just a case of tweaking it to medicine. So some cons of taking an extra degree is that usually it is an extra 3 years, which may seem like a lot. Obviously, I have said time flies, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Sometimes it is a little bit of a put off, you know, thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to do 3 years before I start the degree. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, it's just a negative that some people experience. Another con is that it might put you in a more financially difficult position. Obviously, this is so individual to the person, but it is different in terms of the funding that you will get for your second degree. I don't know too much about the funding, but it is different. I know you don't qualify for as much funding as you do for your first degree, but things change, so make sure that you're looking up and doing your research, because it could be completely different. Another con to doing a degree before applying to uni is it is quite competitive to get into. Not all universities do accept postgraduates, and it is difficult and the places are limited. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, it doesn't mean you should do it, it's just definitely something to think about. So an extra note is something I didn't know. You can actually apply to medicine as an undergraduate even if you've already done an undergraduate degree. It just means you don't get the extra perk of only having to do 4 years at medical school. You'll have to do your 3-year degree and then 5 years at medical school. But it's also something to think about if you're in the position where you've done a degree and you think, you know what, I actually want to do medicine as well. So the 7th route into medicine is studying abroad. As it is self-explanatory, it's just doing the medical degree in another country. Obviously there's so many mixed opinions on this, but it's definitely something to be aware of and be open to if it's something that you think would be a good fit for you. So some pros to studying abroad is that the entry requirements abroad may be lower than they are in the UK. Obviously it is dependent on the country you're applying to. Some entry requirements are higher in some countries, some are lower in some countries. It just depends on which country you're applying to, and it's definitely something that you should do a lot of research on. Another pro is that it gives you the opportunity to live in a new place and experience new culture, and it's also going to increase your independence. So some cons of studying abroad is financially it may be a bit more difficult. Other cons are depending on where you're going to be studying and living, there may be a language barrier, and sometimes people get homesick depending on the person and how close to home you like to be. The last route into medicine that's going to be included in this video, number 8, is a degree transfer. So some universities allow you to swap from a degree that has overlapping content to medicine, like anatomy for example. Just as an example, there's really not many places to transfer, and I haven't met anyone as of yet who has transferred, so I think that does show you how limited the places are. I know the places are limited for postgrads and people who have done other degrees beforehand, but I have met people who have gone into medicine that route, but I have never met anybody who has gone into medicine through a degree transfer. It doesn't mean that it's something that you can't do, it's just something to be aware of, that the places are very limited. They're all the routes that I'm going to be discussing into medicine in this video. I hope that it's going to help you in some way if you're in a position where you've been rejected from medicine, or you just kind of testing the waters and seeing how you apply to medicine. There's so many different routes into medicine, and I really did not realise when I first applied. So I really hope this is going to be helpful to some people who may also be in a similar position that I was, of not really knowing the options that they had. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you've enjoyed. If you have enjoyed, I would really love it if you would like and comment down below and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you all the best in your application journey. So I'm going to go now, but thank you and goodbye. Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite.